I had realized I couldn't work in an environment like that where I was sad or upset or disrespected. That's just not, I mean, I know real estate is stressful. I know this is the biggest purchase of someone's life. I've been through the process now as well, but I know that kindness can lead, and that's what needs to be done.
Welcome back to another episode of the Transaction Care Podcast. I'm your host and resident care coordinator, Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily like the flower because we are learning and growing together. My goal with each episode is to demystify the business of real estate and leave you empowered to start your journey today. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Be sure you head to transactioncarepodcast.com to join my TC community so you can stay up to date with who will be on the show because you never know who might pop up. Oprah, I'm talking to you. And then you can also be the first to know, what I'm up to, like how I'm handling launching a new coaching business, the ins and outs, merch, live Q&As, and so much more. So with all that said, thank you for listening. Now let's get straight to our guest. Today we have in the building Tasheena Pine, owner of Pine Contract Management. She is someone I've been watching online for a few years now. I always see her name being mentioned when it comes to helping others within the TC community. She's always sharing her insight through videos and posts, just bringing ease into our daily work life. And, I thank her for that. And a few things that stuck out to me in her bio is that she has over 15 years of real estate experience. She is a second generation real estate. Shout out to her dad. She got her start assisting during the real estate market crash, and she is still here. And we call that resilience. And now her focus is simplifying the life of agents. And in her spare time, she is assisting other TCs in building their software checklists and systems. She loves to serve the real estate community, and I love that she is here today. So welcome Tasheena Pine to the show. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Of course, of course. So before we take a deep dive into your journey, let the people know, where you're servicing, what cities and states, like shout them out, let people know. So if they want to work with you immediately without even listening to this whole episode, they can do so.
Well, my company is Pine Contract Management. It's doing business as a DBA. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. On Instagram, I am Tasheena Pine TC. And on Facebook, I am Pine Contract Management. I service all of California. I have agents from Northern California to Southern California, really from Sacramento to San Diego. So I really do cover the whole span of the state. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, are you trilingual?
I am.
I thought that was really cool. I just came across one of your videos. You're speaking, was it Tagalog?
Yes.
Very cool.
And I speak Spanish as well.
Wow, amazing. So if anyone out there in real estate looking for someone trilingual and is in need of great help, hit up Tasheena. So let's do this. All right. So I like to do this with everyone that comes on the show. We kind of backtrack and, a lot of us, we just kind of see the highlight reels of the journey. Like I closed 50 deals in a month, 100, 20, 200, whatever, which is great. I love it. Congratulations to anyone that is capable of doing that. But how did you get there? I see we are second generation real estate. Your dad has had some influence in this story. So did you think you were going to be in real estate? Talk about it. Let's get into it.
Not. So I always laugh at my story because I got out of high school and needed a job. And my dad said, well, why don't you be my assistant? He had an assistant at the time, but short sales were the major thing happening. He was like the short sale king of our area.
Yeah.
And so I saw the real estate market where my dad got his license, I think, in 2005 and was rocking it, killing it, closing all these deals. And then the recession happened and the market crashed. And I saw agents go from driving Mercedes and BMWs and Range Rovers and closing hundreds of houses to working at restaurants and trying to feed their families and surviving. And I said, absolutely not. I will not be in this real estate market for long. I'm going to stay with my dad for a little while, working with him, and then I'm going to do something else. And here I am 15 years later. So the beginning was very rocky as far as my introduction to real estate. My dad wanted me to get my license and wanted me to be a part of the real estate industry as a team, but I really was resistant to that. And I just really was just really resistant to the idea of being an agent, being licensed. I liked the idea of being an assistant, being behind the scenes and not showing houses and all that. And so I got married in 2014, and in 2014, I think it was within that year, I got my license and sold houses for a couple of years. I did pretty well, but I realized that still wasn't what I wanted to do. And that's when I ventured into TC work. At the time, over the years, I always did TC work for other people, agents that I worked with. Even when I was an agent, I was doing TC work on the side. So TCing has been a part of my journey the entire 15 years. But I have really, when I left and I actually moved to Mexico in, oh, what year was that? Or in 2023, like 2017. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to be a TC fully. I'm going to have my own business. And I had one agent that was a client.
Wow. Wow. This is my first time hearing this. So I'm sitting back, like eating my popcorn, like, what else? Mexico, what? Recession. So no, it sounds like we kind of started around the same time or had some overlap. So I definitely saw that transition of people just, closing deals left and right. And then all of a sudden, you're right. It's like, welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you? And there's no shame in that. That's everyone's journey is different. And, as I mentioned earlier, resilience, we all have to build ourselves back up somehow. And you mentioned you dabbled in real estate, in the sales aspect of that, for a small amount of time. How did you have any sales experience at that point? Did anyone show you the ropes, or were you just kind of thrown into it?
Well, I was an assistant for two of the top agents. And
Oh,
so at a
okay.
point, I became an assistant to other people and
Mhm.
agents in my area. And so I'd watched them for many years. And so I kind of jumped in head first. And one of the agents he said, if you get your license, I'll give you some clients, things like that. So he gave me one of my clients. I had friends of mine that became one of my first clients. And then I would do floor time, things like that. I wasn't completely familiar with the process of actually like just the grind of being an agent and the constant,
Yes.
being an assistant. I was always doing the background, the marketing, and the paperwork and the transaction. And so the relentlessness of it all was a shock to me. And Saturdays and Sundays were showing houses. So that was
24/7.
that agents do a lot, and I really respect what they do.
Yeah, and the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people these days, or even in the past, look at real estate as this glorified, you know, workspace or career. It's very much like selling sunset. It's like
I,
people all obviously automatically assume that it's going to come with this big check, and it does, but you have to factor in, if you're only getting one or two checks, it has to last
yes.
throughout time. So for you in your journey,
And gas and all.
gas, time, energy, you know what I mean? And it's like a lot of us want to be money affluent, but we forget about time affluence,
Yes.
quality of life, right? So for you, you embarked in that journey. You took that leap and you were like, this isn't for me. No matter how big the checks or how, frequently they come in, there's something about that isn't aligning with me. And I think that's important to factor in, because when we pick and choose our careers, it is a part of us. It's not all of us, and if it's not aligning with who we are as in our personalities, in our energy, in our day to day with family and friends and travel, you're not going to be happy. So kudos to you for recognizing that early on and choosing a path that alignment. I say that word a lot. It's because it's important, and
Important.
so you chose transaction coordination, which you're still doing today. And did anyone train you in that area? Because for me, I was thrown into the fire. I was like, here's your 5 minutes of training. Yeah, you've been the assistant in the office, but the two people training me quit overnight, and I was just kind of like stuck. So yeah, very dramatic. But did you have a similar transition into
I
TC?
had a little bit of experience with, working with my dad and working with his assistant. She wasn't super familiar with the paperwork. Like she was familiar with what they did, but it wasn't like a TC or TC team. I came from a really small town. So the only TCs that I knew of were in-house TCs that had been there for, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
I had, and so it was more of like, okay, we'll do the paperwork. This is the list that they require. Make sure everything is there. And fun fact for me is when I started with paperwork, like actual printed out documents, and we would submit the file to the office, physical file, and submit it, and they
Facts.
in that little section that says reviewed, the broker would initial it. So there was no sky slope or anything like that when I first started. So I got thrown in fully to that side of it. So paperwork I knew, but when I realized I wanted to build a TC company, that's when I realized that I did not have the experience of a a program that was I could just repeat myself. And David Breckheimer always talks about being able to duplicate yourself and being having a system that's consistent. And I didn't have that. Even when I was doing 20 files at a time, I realized I needed that in my life.
Yeah, no, also shout out to David. He was a great resource for me, and we've been in contact. Like I said, you never know who will pop up on the show, so stay tuned, guys. But he is a great resource for our community as well, and he was one of the first people I saw online, like on YouTube, and giving out free resources and building community in a way that wasn't all about the business.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean? And it dug a little deeper. What
Yeah.
was that?
About the people, I felt
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, yeah. So at what point do you think you caught your stride as a TC?
So I was living in Mexico and I only had my one agent, and it's like did assistant work a little bit for a little while, and then I realized I needed to let that go and let my my agent move on to someone else. And so I had one agent that I TC'd for, and I would close about one escrow a month. And that wasn't enough, even in Mexico, to live off of. So
Right.
I found a in-house, or I went into a San Diego office and was a front desk receptionist for about 6 months to get my foot in the door, then became one of the in-house TCs. And that was a busy office. So we started closing, 20 escrows, and that was the most I had ever done. That was my first
Yeah.
time seeing a 15-day escrow. And I was like, whoa, I've never done paperwork that fast before. And so at that point, I realized I needed something. I needed a system. I needed something. And so that's when actually an agent in my office said, did you know there's Facebook groups for TCs? And I was like, what? No idea. And so she invited me to one of the Facebook groups, and that opened up my eyes like I never had before, where people were
Yes.
talking about systems and programs. And that's where I met David, and I met all these amazing people who just handed me information that I had never known. And I'd been in real estate for years. And I was like, do you know what I would have been able to do? And like I said, I came from a small town. So going to San Diego, I was like, there's TCs that just TC and they have companies and they close all these escrows and they have businesses just being a transaction coordinator. They're not in house. Like, what is this world? And so
Right.
once I was opened up to that world, people start telling me about TC programs to keep track of all your transactions. And that's really where it changed for me, where I was like, oh, I can go from pulling my hair out at 20 to, doing so many more transactions.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Facebook groups because I mean, that's how I quote unquote met you, but the Facebook groups are so crucial in just community in general. You know what I mean? And like you said, everyone is just so generous with their information. And as much as I say there are no gatekeepers here, there are no gatekeepers in those groups either. You put out a question, no matter how much experience you have or lack of experience, no matter, whatever, wherever you are on the spectrum of starting this business, everyone's willing to help. I'm approaching 20 years and I still have questions. I still feel like a brand new TC every single transaction, no matter if I'm managing 3 or 30 or whatever. It's like every transaction is different. And yeah, so shout out to the groups. I really love them. So if you are a new TC or a seasoned TC that has no idea that these groups exist, just if you have a Facebook account, make one up, but just search the word transaction coordinator. The groups will come up. And there are some also custom to certain states.
Civic to state, yes.
Yeah, so the California one was the first one I joined, and I was in it saving, commenting, liking, asking questions. And it's just a great resource to have a community when you are first starting out or venturing out into doing your own business. And it is different. Like you said, it's one thing to be in-house where you have that kind of hand-holding, guidance, especially like from in the protection of a broker, but then stepping out is different.
Yeah.
And the mindset is different.
Right.
And you did mention David earlier, but did you also have a therapist or a coach or a mentor that outside of the groups that?
So once I got to
in?
a certain point, I realized that I really wanted to be able to hire an assistant, and I didn't know how to do that. I did not know how to duplicate what I was doing. I didn't know how to teach. I knew how to teach what I was doing, but I didn't know how to let go.
Ooh,
so
that part.
that was the hardest part. And so I talked to quite a few people, and honestly, there's been a lot of people that have helped me along the way, but I ended up connecting with Dustin Curley, and he had actually said, I'm not coaching anymore. And I said, please just take me. This was a couple of years ago. And he said, okay, this is what this is what you're gonna expect from me. I'm like, okay. And we hit it off great. And we realized within us talking about me hiring someone on that I also loved coaching, and I also loved helping other TCs. And he's like, well, I think this seems like what you really like want to do on the side other than your TC work. So let's talk about that. So during the pandemic, we had a group coaching program that was so amazing and so fun. We met every Thursday, and I still miss those guys. And yeah, we just got to do some really fun stuff. So Dustin was pivotal in me realizing that I could let go and that my time was worth more than I was telling myself that it was, and that you have to live and die by your checklist. He always says that. And so that's something that I realized I had to correct my checklist and also make it to where it's understandable for someone else. And I do have an assistant now, and I've had her for a year and a half, and she's amazing. And she makes everything possible that I get to do now.
Yeah, no, congratulations on hiring an assistant, because it's not easy. That transition, like you said, as soon as you said letting go, I was like, oh, relatable. So relatable. I think a lot of us TCs, I think there's, that term imposter syndrome, right? I think a lot of it is like, I'm going to be exposed, like my stuff is a mess, or I'm not a good teacher, then maybe they won't think I know, I actually know what I'm doing. And it's like, well, we can't be everything all at once, right? And that's not our responsibility. We just have to focus on what we need and find a way to make that work and fit into our lives. And I think it's really beneficial to not just have a coach, but you start to realize like, oh, I want to help people. That's where the real like passion starts to show itself. It's like, okay, the paperwork is one aspect of this, but it's like the freedom and just the ability to just be your true self in this whole process and uncover that is a beautiful thing. So are you also coaching as well?
So I haven't done much TC coaching recently, but I was coaching a lot before. Right now, I've actually been helping many TCs with setting up their software programs. So that's something that lately I've been getting a lot of like, hey, I heard you help this person. So I absolutely love doing that. I when I was in school, teachers would say, you should be a teacher. And so I think somehow I got that teaching out of it still, where it really fills my cup to be able to help other people. And that's what I've been helping with lately. But I coach as I have time. So I want to be able to dedicate the time that I need. So I do that on the side a little bit.
I love it. I love it. And transaction management platforms are so crucial. I actually just interviewed the owner of Real Estate Lifeline, Christina,
Yeah.
and that is just one of many platforms that are available. But I wanted to just get into her mind of like the importance of it and why she even created one in the first place. But I didn't start using a transaction management platform until maybe almost 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And I look back on the previous year, like the decade before that, and I was just like, I think I was a trash TC. Like, how did I manage that long?
That's exactly how I feel.
How did I go this long without this?
Yes.
And to this day, I'm just like, I can't live without one. No
Yeah.
matter what company I use, I can't go without using one. And the fact that and they are not easy. I signed up, the one I am using, I'm not going to name names, but I let it sit for like 3 months.
Mm.
I think this is before I even encountered some of your stuff, but I just let it sit. I was like, I don't know how to set this up. I was still using paper and trying to make it function. I was putting my checklist where the agenda was. It was a mess. But once I figured it out and I started seeing like, oh, you do this for people. I was like, so anyway, anyone listening that needs help with this part of it, that is afraid or intimidated by these platforms, hit up Tasheena, because that
And
is
if I can't do it, I do know someone else that can. So
that part. So there are resources out there for us or for anyone out there that is intimidated by these things or these programs.
that's
So
actually the reason that I did it is because when I jumped into the software and I had a couple of options, and one option was what I call the bells and whistles of TC software. And I was like, oh, it's so fancy and beautiful. And I want and I realized it wasn't the right software for me at the time. I
yes,
didn't have the time to dedicate. And so I thought, no, well, I guess this is not it, but everyone says it's amazing. And I realized do what works for you and your business and you at the time. And the software that was more simple and it looks a little older, but honestly, that's the one that worked for me that I was able to jump in, plug and play, and actually start utilizing it immediately. And it saved me so much time. And that's still what I use right now. And I tell people all the time because they always want to ask what I use. And it doesn't matter what I use, but as long as it's something that you know you're going to be able to use and it's going to work for you and consistently work for you. And so once I set mine up and I found the tips and tricks and expedited the process, I realized, hey, I can help other people do the same thing. And instead of, I've known people the same thing. Oh, I did a trial a year ago, or I did a trial 6 months ago, or it's been sitting, I've been paying every month for it, but I don't know how to use it. And I'm like,
yes.
come on, let's give me an hour or two out of your week. And usually that's all it takes for me to send someone off to be able to just get started and do what they need for themselves. So that's actually my favorite thing. I used to do more setting up for people, but now if I can face to face with them, I meet and I teach them how to do it themselves because I feel like you learn the best that way.
No, that's perfect. I love that. And I'm glad you said the part about picking what works for you. Because even though once I committed to what I was going to use, I tried all of the free trials and some were fancy and I'm very tech savvy, but there was
Mm-hmm.
something about having to set things up in that moment that just like created this block for me.
Yeah.
But it was I think I know which one you're talking about. I think we used the same one. It was the more old school looking one that seemed to function better for me. It made some more sense from a paper checklist perspective.
Yeah.
And once I got the hang of it, I was like, what was I tripping on this whole time?
Yeah.
All
And
right.
that's
We don't have to 911 Tasheena right now.
and that's what I had reached out. I've had some TCs reach out to me and they'll say, all I have is a paper checklist or I have a Google sheet. And I'll tell them, if you're looking for what the equivalent of that is in a program, then that's the program for you. But there's some people that have a Monday and a Google sheet and a this and a that. And I'm like, okay, if you want all that, then you need a fancier program to put all those aspects together. So it's like, what are you looking for? If you're looking for a really amazing paper checklist, but digital and emails and Google Calendar integration, then that's that. So it's sometimes just a matter of knowing what you need and going that direction. I had a really simple system that didn't work that well. It was all in my brain. And I realized once I had it in the program, it's like, oh, there's definitely more fluid.
Right. Yes, a lot of fluidity and it's helpful. So whichever brand you choose, just make sure it works with you and how you function and work. So, okay, let's talk about you mentioned living in Mexico, and then at one point you were you living in San Diego while you were working in-house, or were you
No, I cross
traveling?
the border for work every day.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
were you living in like TJ or
Yes,
Laredo?
Tijuana. I would live in Tijuana, and then I found an office in Chula Vista, so it
Oh,
really
it's right
actually wasn't
there.
that far. I have a Century Pass, so it would take me 20 to 30 minutes to get to work, actually.
That is an awesome commute. I
Yeah.
love that. I was just in Mexico the other one, like last month. I was in Nayarit, and yeah, it was beautiful. But I was just like, could I live here? I don't know. This is kind of cool. But yeah, most people, I'm in the Bay Area, so most people travel 30 minutes in traffic, like with no beautiful like reason to go home. Like
Right, right.
they're like not cross country, so that's really cool. So so now you're just in Mexico permanently or
So I'm back in California now.
okay.
I'm actually in the high desert area now. I bought a home, and so we're officially in California again, but we were in Mexico almost 5 years.
Wow, congratulations on buying a house.
Thank you.
So what does a typical day or week look like for you in all the things that you are managing and even home ownership? That's a business in itself. And
Definitely.
people don't really frame it that way, but it is. So how are you if you have a typical day in the week, but what keeps you productive and going throughout the
Sure.
day and the week?
Well, the reason we moved back is to be closer to my family. And so my parents are here and I have younger siblings. And so it's for me, my day varies as far as what happens in home life.
Of
But,
course.
usually I have phone calls with agents and, going through our checklist, checking in with escrow lenders, things like that. I also do volunteer work in the community. So like this morning, I started off out volunteering and then coming home and, now doing the podcast with you, checking emails. I always tell people that I'm the face behind the emails. Being a real estate agent, it very much catered to my A-type extroverted personality. Most TCs are introverts, but I am very
Absolutely.
extroverted. And so it's nice for me to be able to get out and pioneer, be out with others and then I'll get so I actually really enjoy talking with my agents because it's someone to talk to. Otherwise it's usually just me and my dogs on the couch usually right there. And pumping out paperwork, contracts, all that.
That's good. That's good. Do you do any of like time blocking or anything like that? Or is it just kind of I
I
know everyone's different and it varies. So, sometimes I'm time blocking for a good 6 weeks and then I'm over it. And then I'm like,
Yeah. For me, I don't find that time blocking works for the way my brain works.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
I usually do work on, different things at different times. And so there might be, I'm sending out invoices at a certain time, things like that. But I really just go by my checklist. And so that really more runs what I do throughout my day is where am I at with my transactions, my checklist, checking on different transactions, checking with agents. Of course, there sometimes are time sensitive things that need, to be handled right away. And then I'm always trying to think of ways to better my system, expedite my system. My pet peeve for myself is if my agents have to ask me for anything or check in with me, I'm like, oh, I need to dial that in so that they automatically don't have to even worry about it. They just know it's gonna happen. So that's what I'm
Right.
always working on.
Oh, that's great. Is there like a productivity tool or hack or resource that you like can't live without that you just need to in order to function in your business?
Not really. I'm a pretty like focused person. So my biggest thing is like my husband can watch like a whole movie, listen to a whole movie and be working and still focus. And I can't do that.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
realized that for myself, like if I'm the most productive when I have like right in front of me two screens or three screens sometimes, and I'll play like some music in the background and then I can sit. Honestly, my problem is getting away from working. So I'll
Oh,
work for 3 or 4 hours and realize, oh, I need to stand up or I need to. So my goal right now is to incorporate some exercise because I realize sometimes I don't get outside.
yeah.
So, oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. I definitely fall into that trap as well, especially because you think a task is going to take 10 minutes, and then next thing you know, 2 hours have gone by, or you get overly productive and you're just like, well, I could do more. I could do more. I could do more. Or like for me, my creative brain starts flowing and I'm just like writing all these ideas. And then, yeah, it's easy to focus, but also for me, I get easily distracted. So, how are you maintaining your mental health in those realms of, you know, running a business and all of
Mhm.
that?
I definitely realized when my TC business started really taking off, I started working in the weekend somewhat, and that was a mistake. And I realized it, and I realized I needed to have my weekend because the reason I stopped selling houses was because I worked on the weekends constantly. And so I stopped working on the weekend. And so on the weekend, it's my time with my husband, it's my time with my family, we'll do date night or things like that. I love to travel. So I do hope to do more traveling in the next year or so, visiting family, things like that. And then I love to bake. So in the evening, usually I'm baking cookies or something that I'm coming up with. I have some food intolerances. So it's for most people they think of it as a hindrance, but it kind of fuels my creative juices because I'm like, okay, how can I make this gluten and dairy free and taste good? So that helps me actually with my mental health, but also working out, I'm really trying to get better about that. So that helps too.
Yeah, no, it's important to have outlets outlets that aren't all related to business or whatever field you're working in, because
Right.
we need to tap into those different parts of our brain that aren't always being used or activated throughout the day, and who knows what it might inspire in the future, or allow us to process something that we weren't processing before. And definitely working out, I feel that.
And that's why I tell people, I'm like, it's not about trying to hit a certain, I mean, if you're going to try to lose weight, that's
Yeah,
fine. But
yeah.
for me, I realized the difference in my mental state and how much stronger I feel strong as a person when I work out. And so if I look strong or not, I don't know, but I feel strong. And that helps me mentally get through my day and get through challenges. And for me, also, number one really is the spiritual side of things, taking care of myself spiritually, I helped me to be able to be positive and kind and.
That part, that part. I'm like, thank you, God, first
Yes.
before I wake up, before anything for me. No, and just being in motion, just getting some sort of physical activity, moving our bodies, moving away the icks and the aches and all of that. Because sitting down all day can be tough, especially if you don't have the right chair. And I just learned I'm embracing more breathing exercises. I don't know if you've ever tapped into that, but I wasn't really breathing from my diaphragm. And I noticed that once I started doing that intentionally, I don't know, I just had more
Game
energy.
changer, huh?
Game
Yeah.
changer. I was like, why am I so tired all the time for no reason? And I think I just discovered that I wasn't breathing correctly because, I'm so focused on whatever I'm looking at, and I'm not thinking, or I didn't build the habit of like, just taking a deep breath. So
Right.
sometimes if you're struggling out there, if you don't know what you're struggling with, just take 30 seconds even and just take a deep breath, take several deep breaths, and counting breaths and things like that. And
There's some
I'm
pretty cool apps out there. I just put one on my phone. I haven't tried it yet. But even on my Apple Watch, it has like, I forget what it's called, but it's like a calm down thing and it tells
yeah,
you to breathe in and out. Like those things really do help.
yeah. And through my insurance, we get like 90 days free of the Calm app. And I'll put a link in the description, but I started doing like the breathing exercises and I was like, well, let me just try it. It's like 3 minutes. What's it gonna do? Change my life.
Nice.
So if for anyone out there struggling, maybe it could be just as simple as relearning how to breathe.
Yeah.
And that could be the game changer you need, especially if maybe you don't live in a safe neighborhood that you can just go outside and walk around, or you're injured or whatever the case. Like, start at the root with the breathing. So I know we kind of got a little bit off a tangent there, but,
No,
but
that's
it's
okay.
important.
Honestly, I'm glad that's what probably I tell people, like, if there was something that I did as far as like educating myself again or going back to
Yeah.
school, I would love nutrition just because our bodies are so important. And I've met some TCs that I've coached actually, and they'll say, I'm not sleeping. I wake up and I get to work and I sit at my desk for 10 hours. And my thing is, let's get your quality of life better. And so it's not something that I've been able to do recently just because life has just been busy and business has been good. But bringing that quality of life and making sure if there's any TCs watching this and you're saying I'm working and sitting for more than 8 hours, that has to change and your quality of life has to be better. So breathing is a great way to start.
Yeah, thank you for validating that, because it really is important. It's the essence of us. Like, we're not breathing, we're not functioning right. And so yeah, definitely just for me, I have a morning ritual. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's a non-negotiable. If I at least do one of the four, if I could do all four, that's great. But when I don't implement my morning routine, which is like prayer, devotions, journaling, reading, it's or newly meditating and things like that, working out, I do notice a difference. Like you said, it's like you get that little walk in and you feel energized. You feel like a whole new you. Like, so whatever it is you need to do in your day to implement or take away to find more time to put yourself first, it will help with those days that are longer, those 8 to 10, 12-hour days. They happen, especially if you're running a high volume business. And tap in with either one of us if you want to talk more about that, because I think it is an unspoken part of the business people don't talk about. Because even though I asked you about productivity tips or hacks, it's like it can come down to that. What you're doing outside of work,
Mm-hmm.
for you, not for anyone else, but for you personally.
Right.
So I'm glad we did. I'm glad we did talk about that. So I'm gonna shift a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about, let's put the real in real estate a little bit. I want to know, how do you define a bad client?
Ooh, when someone, for me, I'm a big communicator. And when I bring on new clients, I always tell them we're going to go through some growing pains and we have to probably over communicate the first time to get each other's style of communication. But when someone is talking at me and not to me, that's the problem. And usually we don't last that long working together. I have been absolutely blessed in that the people that I work with, I love. I truly love all my agents and they're amazing. But there was a time when I had a group and I didn't have everyone that was loving me and being kind. And so I realized I had to make some changes because I had an agent call me one time and it was a hard deal. And she called me and told me I sent some wrong document that it was something I was told to send, but she was upset about me and she hung up on me. And I thought, whoa, this is a feeling I don't want to feel again. And so we talked through that and I did not work with her anymore. And I had realized I couldn't work in an environment like that where I was sad or upset or disrespected. That's just not, I mean, I know real estate is stressful. I know this is the biggest purchase of someone's life. I've been through the process now as well, but I know that kindness can lead and that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, kindness is so important, and I mean, we're all capable of it.
Absolutely.
Everyone is under pressure.
Even
Everyone
when
is,
we're stressed, we're still capable.
yeah, yeah, and it does take practice. And like you said, you have to establish that up front. And was firing something that came naturally to you, or
Oh no.
okay?
No, I'm not. I'm a very non-confrontational person. People misjudge outgoing people to be confident. I mean, I'm a confident person, but like confident in just like saying no, don't do that. That's a hard for me. That's really difficult. My husband actually has given me a lot of strength in being able to say no, and I had to have a very difficult client recently conversation with a client recently and they were amazing agents, but I just realized what I did and how I did it wasn't working with what was happening with them at the moment. And I just said, I don't think this is right for us to be working together right now. And this is like, or we can work my way. And if that's okay, then let's move forward. If not, then we can't keep working together, because there was, different things that were popping up, and I realized, but that took a long time for me. And I wish I would have accepted it earlier on and just saying, we're not right for each other, because sometimes it's not you or the agent, it's just the fact that maybe it's the timing, or maybe you're just not right for each other. And so that's something I push and encourage with others, is saying no, putting those boundaries down, because when you have boundaries, it's actually so much better. It's difficult at times, but it's so much better, and life is so much easier for you when you put those boundaries down.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's like you said, it's growing pains for everybody in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning, and boundaries are one of those things that have to be repeated often.
Right.
People forget, especially if they get comfortable. And I learned early on when I was starting my business, I would take calls after 5, even though I told people my hours are 9 to 5. And I'm like, oh, it's just a 10-minute call. But that 10-minute call spirals and, snowballs actually into 15, 30, an hour, you know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7. And I'm not talking about, AM or PM, AM
Right.
and PM. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it can get out of control, and realtors work 24/7. We don't, if that's what you establish. But
Right.
and no is a complete sentence. It doesn't have to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't feel like explaining yourself, it's like, well, I'm done. This isn't working. Like,
Right.
that's it, and it could start with that. If someone out there is not comfortable with firing or doesn't know how to, it's a part of the business that we
Same.
unfortunately have to face.
Right.
I was about 2.5 years in before I'd made my first fire and was like, I'm done. It was over email, but for me it was a start.
Yeah. That's how I started as well. And
Mhm.
putting those boundaries sometimes need to be written first to kind of get the feel of it, but it does get better.
It does get better, absolutely. And it just takes time, experience, and it builds up your courage.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, okay, that wasn't as scary. All those stories I was telling myself about this, it's like I was allowing myself to suffer, and I wasn't respecting my values, if anything. And I have to put that first. So thank you for sharing that. That was important too, because I know a lot of us are struggling or have struggled with the whole firing part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's someone out there working with clients that they despise
Mm-hmm.
and are treating them badly. And
Right.
just know you, excuse me, just know you do not have to put up with that,
Right.
and you have a way out.
I love to just say it's time to let them go.
Bye bye.
And it doesn't have to be. One of the things I love to spread, and in the Facebook groups and things, is positivity. It doesn't have to come from angst, it doesn't have to come from anger. It's really best if it doesn't. It really can just come from a professional standpoint of, this is not working for either of us. Because if someone's constantly getting angry at you too, something you're doing is not working for them, whether it's their perception, whatever it is. So letting go of each other is the best thing to do.
Yeah, that's it. And if you're still struggling with what to say, there's tools nowadays like AI that you can
Yeah.
just ask for a script, and you just add your own little spices and flavor
Right.
to it, and you just read it or practice it, rehearse it, and then when you're ready,
There
face
you
it.
go.
Speaking of AI, let's get into it. What are your thoughts on AI and within real estate, or
I think that it really is an amazing, it's a game changer, I think, because I know, especially for real estate agents and me being an assistant previously, one of the hardest things to do is to list a home. You have to arrange pictures, you have to make a description, you have to, all these buzzwords. And if marketing is not where you came from and that's not your experience, that's a really hard thing to do. And so now I think it's beautiful to be able to put in a very generalized description of a home and then put it in chat gbt or AI or wherever you're putting it in, in an AI system, and for it to spit out this beautiful description, with words that are because I think all of us will use the same words like beautiful or
Yeah.
spacious or cozy, and it really can use some beautiful words. So I think that's a really cool tool. And I've seen quite a few people do headshots with it. I haven't been that bold to do that yet, but but I think that's super cool. Just, I do think that it doesn't replace a person because, that personal touch is not there, but it does replace some of the various jobs you have to do, even for us as TCs, creating captions on a post or something like that. I think it's really cool to use. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, same. And if I see the word boast one more time, I, I'm like, I know there are certain words we can't use, but boast is one of those words that is in everyone's description. I'm pretty sure there's another one we can use, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, please. But no, I'm on the same page. I agree. I think AI is, I mean, it's here to stay. I don't see it going anywhere but up. I know there are scary elements to it, but I just imagine, 30 years ago when the internet was starting to, or 20, 30 years ago when the internet started to come up and, before Google, before everything, before social media,
Right.
and how people were scared of the internet back then, and what it has, grown into is amazing. And with anything, there's always going to be the dark side of things
Right.
that,
Right.
I personally am not interested in, but I want to be aware of it, to just, be educated on those things. But I definitely agree. I think it's so important. I use it almost daily now. I noticed even when I have like Google Chrome open, there's like a plugin on the side of my screen that's integrated with their AI system.
Mhm.
So it's like I could search something, but I can also search it in AI.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, and just the
Yeah.
quickness of it. And I've created solo episodes using AI and just adding my own like personal touches to it, and it is helpful. But do you think it would ever replace the TC? I know you said it can't replace all humans.
No, just because I've been in real estate for a very long
Yeah.
time. And when we started getting DocuSign, I know it sounds so simple, but it's like before
Right.
everything was like, oh, this client missed an initial. You have to go back to their house and have them initial. And now there's so much automation in transaction coordination, but there is still that personal part of it. And like for me, I have conversations with my agents sometimes. Hey, this is the timeline, or yesterday, for example, one of my agents had a situation where someone wants to cancel on them. And I said, contractually, this is where we're at. And that AI can't do that for you.
Yeah.
Or to say, well, the client wants this and this. Let's talk about this. Let's brainstorm. You're not going to get that from a computer. There is a lot that a computer can do, but at a certain point, it's like a text message. Sometimes you just got to get on the phone and call. So no, I don't think that transaction coordinators can be replaced by programs or AI.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think it just enhances our jobs a little bit, and some things may be replaced, but I agree. I don't think we can take away the human element of it. Some platforms, some brokerages I work with, they use AI to scan the documents.
Mm.
And I've intentionally, because you can delete things too, but I have intentionally uploaded blank documents just to see
Mm-hmm.
what it would do. And it would, because it'll mark it complete or incomplete,
Mm-hmm.
and it would mark it complete. And I'm like,
Risky.
okay, I see what's going on here.
Right.
So, because I got a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, well, I don't know. Is this something that they're not gonna need us for? But you're right. That human element, you can't take it away. The follow-ups, the timelines, the checking in, and all of that. I mean, who knows? Maybe in 20, 30 years when we're all done and retired and not here, we don't have to do this anymore. But for now, yeah, I don't think we have anything to worry about. But I do think it is a necessary tool to educate yourself on, and it could replace something like Google, the way we search things and
Mhm.
how we receive information. So,
Right.
just educate yourself on it. For anyone out there listening, that's just my opinion. Do your own research. So as we, wrap up the episode, thank you again. This has been fun. I was like looking at the time. I was like, we should wrap things up. I could be here all day. This is amazing, but I know you have a lot of things to do. You have a lot of things on your plate. So I'm just curious, like in the downturn or shift in the market, how are you just maintaining under that pressure and just staying positive through all of that?
I can say it was a challenge. And from going through a recession in the 2008 time and being in the real estate market, that helped me a lot because when I was actually purchasing my home, I'm trying to keep it short, but it was at the peak of the market and there was multiple offers, 10, 20 offers on a house. And we were part of that and putting an offer on the house. And I remember seeing homes sit on the market for 2 or 3 days longer. And I told my husband something's about to change.
Oh.
And then it was 3 or 4 days, and then it was 4 or 5 days. And I said, do you see how this is just slowly? And most people are not noticing because the market is moving so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But anything that moves fast has to move slow at some point. That's my philosophy. And so with the real estate market, it will go super speed and it will go super slow. And sometimes at the blink of an eye. And so when the market was shifting, I actually took on a few new agents. I started marketing myself a little heavier. I brought on a few new agents. And for months that other people were telling me that they didn't have business, I had a lot of business still.
Mm.
I did end up getting hit during the winter season where I was nervous. Like you said, we with AI got nervous. I got nervous for my business this year, last December, really, where I was like, is this it? Is this going to be the time where I have to get another job or I have to just do a mass marketing or I have to start going to offices and handing out flyers because I also have an assistant, so now I have an employee that relies on me for income to support her family, and I got really nervous and we had a conversation, and I was so glad that I we had a conversation where business was so slow that we did cut down on her hours, and I had to do that, I think, 2 pay periods. And then I told her I'm going to do everything that I can to get you back at, and it was a few hours, it wasn't a lot, but it still hurt my feelings to even have to do that.
Yeah.
And I think by the third pay period, she was back full time. And I marketed like I've never marketed before. And there was a few agents that I had noticed, like, I really liked what they were posting on social media. It was very professional, it was very kind, it was very client focused. And so I was like, I want to work with those people. And one of the agents I am working with her now, and she's just as amazing as I thought she was. So I also connected with another agent who I worked on the other side of him, and he said he really liked my style and we've been working together. And so I went from, and I'm going to share this so that if there's any TCs out there who go through a hard time, they're going to know. I went from, my lowest was I had 8 active escrows a few months ago, to now I have 38 active escrows. So it is possible, go with the change. But while my business was slow, I actually got my notary certification. So educate yourself and continue to grow. It's there if I need it. I'm not actively using it, but I did decide I wanted to do something new, and while I had the time, and I did it. So I'm proud of myself for that.
Oh man, that was great. That was everything. You just nailed it on the head because in those trying times, that's what's really going to define you as a business owner, as a person, who you've built yourself up to be all this time. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a failure or that you were worthless or anything like that. It just means like, okay, well, now's the time to really show, what I'm capable of, and pivoting and trying new things and getting that extra education. If there's anything that will carry you in this life, it's your education. That alone will take you far. And thankfully you caught it a little earlier. You had the awareness to see like, okay, something's going on here. Let me just start now. And our intuition doesn't lie, and
Yeah, do it. It
just
saved me.
do something a little different, make some adjustments with the spending or the savings and things like that. And and it does hurt when you have to take away things from
Yeah.
people. It does hurt. And but you did everything possible to, get back, and you are. So that's dope. Congratulations on that. So last couple questions, with your experience, growing and your career flourishing at this point in time, I want to give people some keys at this point and wrap it up. But what is something you are glad you did starting out? And then what is something you wish you did starting out with everything in mind today? What is yeah.
I'm glad that when I decided to be a TC and I didn't have, because I hear sometimes people say that they don't want to go in-house to a brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the best thing I could have done, because I met some amazing people, agents, other people as well, made business connections that I would have never made if I never stepped foot into an office. And so I actually took a kind of a pay cut, because I had been a real estate agent and they didn't, some people didn't even know. And then I went into being receptionist, and I had done that when I was 18, 19 years old. And it was years later, and I did it. And so that was something I really am glad that I humbled myself, and I went into a brokerage for some time and got some really beautiful connections. And something I wish I would have done from the beginning is learn from other TCs, which I didn't know that there were Facebook groups out there, and also software. I wish I would have jumped on software immediately. I have people say, well, I only do 1 or 3 escrows. Do it. Do it, because soon that 1 or 3 escrows is going to turn into 10 or 20, and you don't want. The time to learn is when you're beginning, not when you're at 20 and about to pull your hair out because you don't know what's going on, So I really wish I would have known about software earlier on and jumped into it, because it would have saved me hours of my life and stress.
That's perfect. And I feel like you just saved someone out there years of stress. So. Learn from us. Learn from us. We crawled so you could walk and run, or we walked so you could run. So no, that was perfect. Thank you. And, what is one goal you don't mind sharing publicly, just to hold yourself a little accountable throughout the year, that you envision for yourself moving forward?
Well, one of the things that during actually the slow time, I decided that I was going to start helping other TCs with covering their business. And it's something that I was able to do a few weeks ago. And the nice thing is, because I'm at my computer and working, it didn't take away from my business at all. And I was able to help another TC, and she was like, my agents didn't even miss me. And so I won't do it all the time, because obviously, I have a business to run, but being able to help others is something that I was really more heavily into it during like the lockdown and me being at home, and being able to just even help agents, help TCs, just help people is really something that I want to be able to do.
That is beautiful, and the best possible way we could have ended this conversation. Tasheena, this has been amazing. And I want people to follow you, or just if, any realtors out there looking for a TC, or TCs looking for help, guidance. She's not going to do everything for you, but she will guide you and steer you in the right direction. So Tasheena, tell people where they could follow you, your website, all of it. The floor is yours. Go for it.
My website's pinecontractmanagement.com, and on Facebook I am Pine Contract Management, and on Instagram, where I'm more active on Instagram, is Tasheena Pine TC.
Perfect. So thank you all for listening, especially if you got this far in the episode. I appreciate your time. Tasheena, again, this has been amazing. I hope to have you on again. I wanted to just give people a little bit more background into who you were. I wanted to get to know you, and I felt like this was a cheat code in doing so.
I'm so glad we connected.
Definitely. So I'm pretty sure Tasheena will be back. We could talk a little bit more on in depth, like her home buying journey or whatever else that comes up in this journey of ours in this TC world. But until the next episode, you can follow me, Lilly, on all social media platforms at Transaction Care, across the board, easy. Transactioncare.com is my main website, where you could find all of my services and what I'm doing, what I'm up to. But until then, new episodes every Monday, Transaction Care Podcast. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. let's coordinate. Talk soon.